Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome back to another captivating episode of the Love People Technology Learning podcast. And I'm your energetic host, Tamara Kocharova, CEO of Lanes AI, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join us once again for an electrifying dive into thought-provoking conversations. We dive deep into the intersection of humanity and innovation. Join me as we chat with learning and development experts from the world of business, education, and personal development about how people and technology come together to shape our world. We explore how culture, literature, creativity, travel, and human relationship influence personal growth and skill development. Discover the values and meta competencies of the 21st century that drive the progress of countries, cities, and entire industries and why they matter. But this episode, it's not just about insights and theories. It's about embracing the joy of life and making a positive impact. Through inspiring stories, we are on a mission to make people's life happier and more fulfilled.
I'm a late adopter for AI. I can see the potential on how it can save a lot of time. But with any new technology, I think that we're probably going to see some good involvement, some good advancements, and a lot of bad advancements. And I think that's going to come down towards, are people using it in a lazy way? AI is just the starting point. It isn't the finish line. It's something that you should start with so that you can build out, but then you need to spend the time on really fine-tuning it so that it comes out correct. I've got a friend, he's in Washington State, and he's doing research on emojis to see how emojis are utilized to communicate different ways. And you could use emojis as an activity where you give them a prompt and they have to respond with only emojis, and then they talk it through, kind of like on drawing a picture. You draw a picture to describe a difficult or like a complex theme. There's a lot of ways for you to use it. You could use memes if you wanted to, where people can learn off of that. And then that in itself is a little bit of humor, but you're also teaching something that people are going to remember.
Wow, so great about emojis.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes, it's so funny, but I think it's some theory, and he has some hypothesis which he wants to check.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yes. Today, my amazing guest is dear Russell Sweep, a dedicated learning experience designer with over 7 years of experience in instructional design and LXD, driven by a deep passion for discovery, aesthetics, and making a meaningful impact. Russell has shaped his career around enhancing the educational experiences of others. His strong foundation in facilitation, blended learning, and cognitive theory was solidified after he earned his master's degree and entered the workforce, where he began developing interactive lessons for higher education. So, sit back and get ready for an inspiring journey into the life and insights of one of the tech industry's most forward-thinking leaders. Welcome to my podcast, Russell. I'm so excited to see you here.
Well, it's so lovely to see you again. Oh my gosh. It was the highlight when I went to go visit that conference to see you. And I loved spending time with you, just, in the conference, but also being able to kind of grab some drinks afterwards and get to know you a little bit. And I feel like we keep crossing paths in the best way. So thanks for having me. Oh my God.
Yes, thank you so much. I think last time when I saw you, it was Seattle, right? In October. Yes. And yes, you're absolutely right. That's conference open for new people and new great specific time and place to collaborate something and to do something really great for the world, and I love it. Yes.
I love it too. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and how is going your day? You started to tell me about something new in your life, and I have a first question for you.
No, things are going really well. Currently, I work for Goodwill Industries International, and we are building some fantastic stuff for our organization, and my team is fantastic. I'm really feeling learning is a priority there, and we're doing a fantastic job really molding what that landscape looks like. So I'm really looking forward to diving into some of these questions with you.
Oh my God, I love it. And yes, I'll try to do everything to open your heart with learning experience. And you had a significant journey in instructional design and LXD. And what initially drew you into this field, and how has your passion for discovery and aesthetics influenced your career? Tell us, please.
Yeah, well, I was a professor for about 6 years in Southern California. And when I was doing that, I fell in love with the idea of transmitting information and translating it in a way that people will be able to really digest it in a personal way. So a lot of this came down to how can I create impactful experiences for the learner, right? And I loved introducing adult learning theories and building that curriculum so that my learners could really benefit off of it. Now, when I was doing that, I didn't really always get to see the end result. I would teach an entire semester and then my students would leave and they'd do something else and I may not stay in touch with them. And then I also, since I got my master's in clinical psychology, I was a therapist for a little bit. And when you go to therapy, oftentimes you're trying to solve particular problems. And once you overcome them, you move past. And I didn't really get to connect with people afterwards. So there was that sense of I wanted to see the end result and the impact that I was having. So learning development, instructional design provided that for me, where I had this chance to see things from A to Z. And then at the end, be able to see how it's making an impact on the learners. So that's something I've been really passionate about.
I love it because, it's so important to think about impactful for the learners. And you told about your academic experience, and I've never been in academic field, but it's a big difference, right, between business learning and academic learning. What do you think about that?
Huge difference. I mean, I had to learn a whole new terminology and vernacular coming into the business industry because there's also a little bit of a bias where people in learning and development companies may look down upon teachers because they might think that they can't push the agenda for business goals. A lot of teachers, they understand how to create learning objectives and learning outcomes, but it's that transition to business goals where it is a little bit more difficult unless you've been in the industry, a corporate field, to really wrap your mind around it. But honestly, once you start learning a little bit about it, you can implement it into your own design. And it's something that, I mean, both industries, academia and corporate, they both use adult learning theories. So you have a great foundation in understanding how adults learn. You just need to bridge that gap between understanding how can you move the needle forward for a company.
Yes, and I think is really important to the instructional design for your business learning and for the business education. It's about practice. It's really about practice cases, different kinds of situation which we have in real business. Because yes, you told that academia is really great in a theory and amazing, and I love it. But now I see the trend that's giant companies, they buy a lot of academia courses for the learners, for the employees. And I see that e-learning courses develop so fast. And I saw a lot of great examples from MIT or Harvard or another one. And huge companies love to buy it for their employees. And it's a trend, right? What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. I think that if they are a trusted source and they've been around, we tend to be a little bit more comfortable working with partners that we've used in the past. But we're seeing a lot of trends that are moving more in the direction of behaviors, whether it's people skills that we're trying to develop and the impact that's happening in a company. Like you said, academia is a lot of theory. Unless you're in maybe a technical field, it is a lot of theory that you're trying to apply towards the field. So in that sense, you're learning a little bit more of how do you learn and how can you take in this information and remember it, as opposed towards a corporate field when you're learning more about how can I change my behaviors with the information I just learned? And how can I use that to push the agenda moving forward a little bit more?
Yes, and you mentioned the big challenge, it's how I can change my behavior. And I think it's a big question for all the learners and all the instructional designers, facilitators, teachers, And my next question will be, what are the current challenges you face in the instructional design industry, and how have you addressed these challenges?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, since we're talking about behavior, I think it wraps up into that as well, the idea of how can you influence behavior. And one of the things that was really beneficial is I got my degree in clinical psychology on how I understand how the mind grows and how the brain learns. And so whenever you're trying to influence behavior, you have to bring it back to the ideas of previous experiences that people have, connecting that thought so that they're not starting from ground zero. So they have something in their past that they're able to help connect that information with and move it forward. So you're creating this scaffolding for them, and you're not just trying to throw them in the deep end for new information. You're trying to tie it into experiences, things, scenarios that they've learned previously, so that they're more inclined to change that behavior because they already have a good foundation moving forward.
But if we are talking about how to change the behavior for learners, what do you think? What's most useful examples in instructional design, which will help us to show them that you need to change your behavior, maybe some life hacks which you have in your program, maybe some tips, because I will answer after you, because I have my own tips on that. But it's so interesting. What do you think? What's your favorite?
I think motivation is the most important thing there. You have to motivate people to want to change. And a big part of that in my own industry comes from communication. You need to make sure that people understand the why behind something and that they're willing to move forward with it because they realize that it has an impact for them. So, for instance, I feel like AI is a big topic that we're discussing a lot in learning and development, right? And that can be very challenging for people who maybe didn't grow up with the technological changes happening as rapidly as they are. So, myself included, I was very apprehensive to take on AI because I was like, that's a new thing I need to learn. I'm already doing the work. Why do I want to learn a completely new software in order to do this? But then I attended a session one time where this individual, he tied AI into the Microsoft suite, and he showed how you could build an entire slide deck on PowerPoint with all the aesthetics and branding and all the terminology. And then it even had speaker notes just by putting in a prompt. And that was a light bulb moment for me because I was realizing that, oh my gosh, this is something that could completely change how I do work. And I can see the why behind it. I can see the benefits behind this. And that itself was super motivating for me.
Yes, and great example, because about AI, I told that I can tell you my favorite, but now I'm thinking about last week we organized the virtual event for instructional designers and for chief learning officers and facilitators who are really inspired about AI in learning and development field. And we talked about AI in synchronized learning and asynchronized learning, sometimes in blended learning or hybrid learning, because it's really a trend now, and people want to learn more about that. In Lanes AI, in our virtual classroom solution, we have AI bots. They cannot talk to you, but they can write some message, and they can discuss in some ideas, they can write ideas, and they can vote, and they can do everything. And we had a interesting exercise when humans and AI bots create together some ideas about I don't remember which question was about L&D or something like that. And the exercise was after that they need to choose some of the best ideas, they voted, and we wanted to see who won, AI or human, which idea won? Because they created together and they did not know who created this idea or this idea. And it was like a competition because humans, of course, when we talk about the speed, of course, AI is faster. For sure, because they have like a lot of information, like ChatGPT knows a lot of stuff. But we saw that humans, they can create sometimes more creativity ideas, sometimes no. But in our experience, human one, first 2 or 3 ideas was created by humans. But this exercise showing us that you have motivation, you want to win and you want to change your behavior. You want to be you want to think like a different, you want to create something new, or you start to think. And it's shown the same. You told about motivation. You need to know why we do it and why I need to change it. And yes, we can organize some different kinds of activities for that. In instructional design, we can create something special for different kinds of behavior, different kinds of skills, something like that.
Well, I love that you talked about kind of the internal versus external motivation. That's something that I always talked about in my class as well. And it really comes back to the idea of there are some external ideas of competition. Competition's a big one. Gamifying something is a big one also. But there's also an internal motivation of your own sense of control. Do you have a sense of control in what you're doing? And I think that comes back to the idea of communication. If you can communicate to people and you can ensure that they understand the why, they understand the outcome, the deadlines, they understand everything, they're not confused, they feel like they have control in that situation, and they're more likely to be motivated to get the end result.
Yes, you're absolutely true. And I have now a question in my mind about we are all the different and we have a different motivation, but how we are instructional designers can organize their learning process to involve different kinds of motivations, because we are different people. Okay, I'm internal motivation person, another one external. My learning process can be from what I'm seeing, or what I'm trying, or what I'm listening. How to involve all the in all the place and all the time, everything what we know about the motivation. And
that's the $1 million question, right? It's a tough one, because I would imagine that you have different motivation on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
Every day, I might wake up and I'm super pumped to get a particular project done. Or another day I might wake up and I'm just dragging my feet, I can't get something done. So even though there are our own internal movement to get something done, there's a lot of external factors that are pushing against us. I think if in training, if you can try and remove as many of those external things that are, either confusing or they're taking people's attention span away from it, they're overloading their cognitive load, you can at least kind of make it a more level playing field for people to be able to comprehend and feel that motivation a little bit better. So, maybe that means carving out time for people to do training so they don't have to try and shoehorn it in at the end of their day.
Yeah.
Or maybe it means, doing group training, because then they work alongside their cohort members and they have this motivation to, work as a team. There's a lot of different ways that you can try and balance that. But I think it comes down to making sure that you're able to balance it and not overwhelm them with too much.
Yes, and it means that blended learning programs are really good for that, because we can use different kinds of learning activities and learning opportunities which we have, some kind of videos, audios, articles, maybe a project with your colleagues, or group work learning with your I don't know, from different kinds of departments can be involved. Yes, it means I think I see your face and I think you love blended learning.
Oh yeah, it's something that's every day I get to learn something new, a new tool to use. That's super exciting. That's motivating for me, because I'm a curious person. I constantly want to learn.
Yes, it's a great skill, to be curious all your life. And I think with the 2 weeks ago, we talked to Phyllis Banner about like curiosity and how to save curiosity like a learner or like a facilitator or like a person for all your life. It's really important. Yes, and I love it. And you mentioned like cognitive theory, which we talked about, and with your background in cognitive theory, how do you ensure that your designs meet like diverse learning needs and support robust learning objectives? It's really interesting question, and like you are my first guest who talked about cognitive theory.
Yeah, well, I think you really need to understand, like we talked about, what are the things that are impacting the learner and how can you mediate that? Because you don't want to overload someone. But you also want to make sure that you provide multiple ways for a person to digest this information. We talked about blended learning as being a way for that. And you want to make sure that motivation is key. So there's a lot of different factors that are all coming into this. You can start with understanding that adult learners learn in a particular way. And you can focus in on what those theories are. Like I really love Gagne's 9 events because it really starts with things like grasping attention. I would say even further, you need to hold people's attention. And the way that you do that is you ensure that learning is an experience. The way
Mm-hmm.
that you teach someone should be memorable because oftentimes they may not remember, the forgetting curve might be there and they may not remember as much information, but they will remember the experiences. And that itself is an anchor for you to tie the learning into, is that experience. So maybe it's something like everyone get up and do, a role play that is related to what we're talking about. Maybe you have whiteboards and everyone draws what they think this people skill looks like. That way that they can get artistic into that. There's the vehicle of how you deliver that learning has just as much impact as the material itself. So when you can focus in on how you deliver it and how you can overcome a lot of these external pressures, that attention is going to be held, and then you're going to be able to digest it a lot better.
Yes, and I love what you said about like role-playing game or like, whiteboard, so they need to do something together. And like, yes, it's really great. But maybe, do you have like your a really practice story about some kind of great experience for learners where they was like really so excited, and like after the training they talked about like they changed the behavior after your training or after your program, like.
Yeah, so right now I'm focused in a lot on leadership development. And
Great.
one of the best things about leaders is they can teach each other. You shouldn't be up there trying to lead a lecture and they're listening to you like it's a TED Talk. It should be a lot of opportunities for them to learn from each other and bring up their experiences and then kind of troubleshoot it with other leaders that are around them. So I love the idea of breaking into groups, having them learn from each other and teach each other from their own experiences through guided prompts. And sometimes that means scenarios. Sometimes it means just a quick question that they have to overcome together. Or maybe it's role play opportunities. Some people are a little bit squirmish with role play, so you got to kind of test that out a little bit. But I do feel like if you can put them in a room together and, if like the temperature is nice in the room and there's food, they're going to be there to learn and they're going to have a good time. And I also think that if you can ask good questions, good thought-provoking questions, they're going to fill in a lot of that information themselves.
Yes, and it's so interesting. You talked about leaders, and it means they has to be a subject matter expert to each other. It means like they should organize some interesting activities to each other to develop themselves, because like, when they're leaders with their like 7, 10 years old in the industry, of course you can teach them, but like what kinds of theory, like they know a lot of, it's just like their life experience and how they like, your mission is like to organize like maybe some coaching or facilitation experience for them. And you told about that. Yes.
I mean, my population is also like executive leadership teams.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
what am I supposed to teach them that they don't already know, you know? So a lot of
Yeah.
times it really does come down towards them brainstorming together so that they can solve something. But on top of that, they're also developing relationships. They're developing a support group. They're developing this communication and connection with other people, potentially in a different department they may never spend time with, you know? So this is a chance for them to broaden their network, broaden the way that they see things, their perspective, and then teach each other. So it's a really great idea just to kind of, you facilitate and you drive that ship, but essentially they're the ones who are doing that work and getting the impact out of it in the end.
Yeah. And what do you think? Like, I'm really curious about the question about like executive leaders. And yes, you work with them. Like, what do you think about like games for them? Do they love to play the games? Like, because the games, like one kind of learning activities, it's one of the learning experience which we can have. What do you think? Do they love to play the game, like some kind of leadership skills games or like some kind of strategic games? Like, what do you think about that? Do you have this experience or no? Like, it's more than like facilitation, like coaching, but games, no, it's like for middle management or something like that.
That's a really good question. And I don't know if it's something that I've really looked deeply into, but I will say that a lot of ELT, what they do want is they want tools that they can bring to the rest of their team. So they want something that is an actionable item that they can bring back and they can teach the rest of their team or implement it immediately. I don't think any leader wants to waste their time. Not that games are a waste. I don't think so. But I will say that when you talk towards business leaders, you want to treat them with that respect of saying that this is something that is actionable, that you can immediately take away. And that's why learning objectives are so important, because they're immediately going to want to know, how is this going to have an impact and how am I going to see this impact, right? If you put it behind a game, it might be fun for a moment, but I think they might also think like, what am I doing here? They may not be as clear towards what they're getting out of this. It might be entertaining, but they may want a little bit more, So I think it's an interesting line to walk, but definitely make sure that you ground it in what are those actionable items that they can take away to the rest of their team.
It's really interesting for me too. And like, I agree with you, like, yes, because they need to understand that it's really so valuable for their experience and how they can implement it to the work. And like,
I do think you can still have fun in a training. I'm not saying that. And like, I introduce a lot of humor in my trainings as well, because I want to make sure that they can internalize it in their own experiences. So I provide humor so that people can do that and they can be like, absolutely, I've been in that situation and it's pretty crazy that we both have that in common. So that definitely is a way. But I do think that you definitely want to make sure that there's something that they can take away and they know exactly what that is.
Yes, thank you. We talked about like the result and outcomes in learning processes, because it's really important, because it depends on learning objectives and what's in the end. And let's talk about learning outcomes. How do you determine that learning outcomes have been successfully achieved, especially considering the complexity and debate surrounding this issue?
Yeah, so I really think that whenever you're doing a training, you absolutely need to follow up. You need to have some sort of evaluation. Maybe that is a survey, maybe it's more of a comprehensive interview, but you need to understand if this is having an effect. And I feel like this is something that is challenging when you have so many projects on you. You feel like you constantly have to jump from one ship to the next. But that evaluation is important because you need to know that what you're doing is having an effect. People are going to look at something and they're going to say, oh, this was enjoyable, but are they changing that behavior that we talked about? Are they pushing the agenda forward? So a lot of it comes down towards how you evaluate. And, this reminds me, I have worked with my team on a new hire orientation for our company. And one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to see, is this having an impact? Like this comprehensive new hire orientation, are we seeing changes? So we looked at things like retention rates. We looked at things to determine if people are having less accidents. Are they having more engagement at work? And a lot of times when you're building it out from the start, you can try and work that in. But other times when you come in and you have an initiative that has already been running, you have to be a little bit of a detective to try and figure out like, how is this working like retroactively? How has it impacted? So when I came on this new hire orientation that we've been working on, I had already run for several years. So we had to look into what are the results for these past years and how has that changed from the years before it started rolling out, and compare those two to see if there is an actual business outcome from it.
Yes, and you mentioned that you are doing it 7 years, right? Like near 7 years in the company.
So this company, no. This
No.
company, I've been about a year and a half, but
Yeah.
I was a contract worker before that, and then I
Yeah.
worked for as a professor for years before that.
Yes, and like you can see the result, like outcomes, like last several years. And it means like if you have the data, it's great. But when you start, it means like do you need to have like some kind of hypothesis about your outcomes? You need to predict something, like you need to think about the future, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that brings it back to kind of academia, right? You need to have some sort of goal in the end that you're trying to measure. And even if it doesn't actually meet your, like you said, your hypothesis or your learning objective, your learning outcome, that tells you something also. That tells you that you need to tweak it slightly so that it changes, so that it can try and meet it. So even if you're not successful, you're still learning something. And so a lot of times, in academia, we really try and celebrate people for getting a hypothesis that like they're statistically significant and it meets what they were trying to do. But we should also celebrate the facts when it doesn't happen if you do that step-by-step process, because it still teaches us that there are a couple things we need to change in order to try and get it to be successful.
Yes, yes, it's great. And we talked a little about AI. Yes, it's a big innovation in our life. And you mentioned like the importance of innovation in your work. And can you share an example of a project that was particularly innovative and what made it successful? Because I love innovation. I am an innovation fan. Yes, it's my favorite thing which I create, and like yes, I love it. Share with me like your interesting story or project.
Yeah, so one time I worked for this wellness app as a contractor, and they had a lot of resources, tons of resources, but it was all over the place. It was a complete mess. So they wanted me to come in and help them curate it. So what I did is I worked with a lot of different subject matter experts in order to try and figure out how can we make this easy to access, but in a fun way. So I drew influence from like dating apps where you swipe left or right based on like how much you like something. And people loved it because it remembered the items based upon topics that they really enjoyed. And it provided them with new resources and links based upon their previous desires. So they could kind of build their own little learning profile at that point, where it would send them ideas and say, like, based upon your previous selections of swiping right, like, we think you would like this. And would you like to take deeper dives into this? A lot more enjoyable than just going on like a library or a database and clicking on links. This was something that was like, it would put the picture and the title in front of you and have a little blurb below it that would say like what it's all about. And it was something that like it wouldn't overwhelm them too much because they're only really seeing one thing in front of them at a time.
Wow, so great project. And I recognized the project which we created many years ago. I think it was, oh my God, maybe 7 years old, for the telecommunication company in Europe. And we created dating app for mentor and mentee. It was like a Tinder because like it means like you told the same story about like swipe right, left, and it means that's innovative to HR and educational technology industry field come from our real life. we don't create some really innovative platform. We need to take some really usual based life experience and implement to our educational learning experience like for every day, because like all of us know Tinder, all of us know Uber, all of us know Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have habits and our experience with that. We know how to use our fingers on the mobile app. And it means it's our life experience, and we need to implement this innovation to our learning experience. It's great, but it's like, it means the startups and like learning educational technology company need to think about that, about this experience.
I'm a big fan of trying to recreate something that people are already familiar with, because I feel like right off the bat, they're going to see it as something that's kind of fun and something that relates towards what they previously have done. And then also, we can sometimes struggle in navigating certain apps that we're not really familiar with, or navigating like, I don't know, like a list of links when it's just kind of the scroll of death,
Yeah.
So if you can provide something that is similar to what people are already used to, they're going to be much faster to jump onto it and explore it.
Yes, and save time and yes, but like they will have a fun and they know how to use it. It's great. Yes, it's brilliant. I think so. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. And this project is so really interesting for me too. I think you have a lot of fun. I know you, and I think you're a person who has a lot of fun, like all over your life, not just in learning. Am I right or no?
It goes right back to you, Tamara.
Yes, it's true. And you have a really a great experience and background in blended learning, and I want to talk to you about this experience and how do you balance traditional educational methods with modern technologies to create effective learning experience, which we have now. And you are from academia field too. It means what does it mean, traditional education?
I don't think any facilitator should just be lecturing. I feel like that itself is an antiquated system that we should move away from. If you think about like people falling asleep or having a terrible experience in a learning initiative, it's probably because they have to listen to someone drone on and read off of PowerPoints for hours upon hours. It's not the way that we take in information. So you need to create experiences. You need to create opportunities for people to have multiple ways to take something in and use their strengths and motivation to encourage them to learn that. And so a lot of it comes down towards using the tools that you have. You mentioned Menti previously. Menti is a great platform to try and get a quick understanding of how people feel about something. You could do a word cloud, you could do surveys, you could do a quick game on something and then move on. When you can mix it up and create those opportunities, people are going to be more likely to take that in and learn it. It goes back to that cognitive theory and cognitive load.
Do you have your favorite modern modern technologies for your learning experience, or no, really your favorite which you use?
Honestly, we do use Menti, but probably I'm a bit old school. My favorite is probably just a whiteboard.
Oh my God, you're old school. Oh my God.
I am. I spend time in front of that whiteboard as a professor. You better know I have a relationship with it. So at this point, yeah, I feel like you can do so much with that, especially if you open it up towards an entire group where they can mess around with it. So for instance, we like to take the mission statement of our company and tie that into behaviors and values, right? And one of the best ways to do that is to put it up on a board and allow people to mix things around like a puzzle to try and figure out how they can connect things, or draw lines to figure out how a behavior supports a mission statement. And that in itself is an innovative way that you can use the tools immediately at your disposal, like the whiteboard on Zoom, to be able to do that, right? I feel like if we rely so much on tools, what if that tool doesn't work? What if something happens and you now have to scramble around trying to find a different solution? It should really come down towards, can you do a creative idea with the basic tools at your disposal? And I feel like that in itself is your own way of being creative and utilizing what you have.
Oh my God, you know what you're talking about. It's my field. You told that you are old school person, and we know that Zoom and Microsoft Teams, it's just like a conversation tool. It's a meeting tool. It's not for your instructional design or learning experience tool. We've got it when pandemic came to our life, and like, okay, we have just like Zoom, Teams, Skype, like Webex or something like that. And you're right. You try to create something like you see like chat, you see like raise your hand, you see just like, oh, okay, like in Zoom, they have a whiteboard and that's it. But instructional design for our learning experience in like virtual classroom and in classroom, it's not just raise the hand, write the chat and whiteboard. You talked about like role-playing game. You talked about brainstorming. You talked about like their group experience, their like creative ideas, like voting and everything. And it means it's not enough to use some kind of old communication tool for that. It means we need to create really professional tool for instructional designers and for the facilitators. It's like which we are doing in Lanes because we have all-in-one. And it means just like from one click, you can organize everything. You don't need to think about like Minty, about Zoom, about whiteboard, about like, I don't know, Google spreadsheet where you can ask the feedback from your training or something. And you talked about like engagement. Engagement is really important. Why we try to create like different kinds of learning experience in virtual classroom. And like in Lanes, we have an interesting feature when we organize the group, when it's breakout rooms. And can you imagine people go to automatically with AI, what AI is doing? AI analyze the engagement of different kinds of participants and they create the group where people with a high level engagement and low level engagement together. And they can work together because like, you know, it will be like, it's a balance. It's not just like, and they can work together and they can influence each other. It means they can work, okay, they can create some ideas to do a brainstorming in a group and something like that. Yes, it's interesting because, you know, we talked about our life experience, but like in the other hand, technology can develop our field. Like it could be really innovative for us, like learners, like instructional designers, like facilitators. And we want to do like our life experience so simple, like, you know, just one click. And you don't need to think about nothing because like AI or the tool can work with you and will be your partner, but not just like a something for to talk about, like something and just it.
I think you can get really creative with the things that you have at your disposal. Like I've got a friend, he's in Washington State, and he's doing research on emojis to see how emojis are utilized to communicate different ways. And you could use emojis as an activity where you give them a prompt and they have to respond with only emojis, and then they talk it through, kind of like on drawing a picture. You know, you draw a picture to describe a difficult or like a complex theme. There's a lot of ways for you to use it. You could use memes if you wanted to, where people can learn off of that. And then that in itself is a little bit of humor, but you're also teaching something that people are going to remember.
Wow, so great about like emojis.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes, it's so funny, but I think it's like some theory and he has some hypothesis which he wants to check.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yes. we talked about innovation, and based on your extensive experience, where do you see the future of learning experience design heading, especially with advanced in technology like AI and machine learning? What do you think about that? Because I know that AI now supports you everywhere, and you talked about like to create some presentation, to create some pitches, to create some pictures, everything. Yes, talk to me about that.
I'm a little mixed on this, to be honest, because I'm a late adopter for AI. I've been really apprehensive on it for a while because I wasn't really sure if it was something that did it mean that I wasn't doing the job? Did it mean that I was taking these shortcuts that would I don't know, it would devalue my own work? There were a lot of personal biases that I had. But I will say, I think that based upon, especially that conference I went to, and I got to see how it integrated in with the Microsoft suite, I can see the potential on how it can save a lot of time. But with any new technology, I think that we're probably going to see some good involvement, some good advancements, and a lot of bad advancements. And I think that's going to come down towards, are people using it in a lazy way? You know, are they quickly putting in a prompt and they're copy and pasting exactly that? Well, that's going to create a lot of miscommunication. It's going to create a lot of like results that aren't really founded in facts. I feel like it really comes down towards the idea of people spending the time on quality assurance to ensure that a prompt that is generated from an iterative AI is just the starting point. It isn't the finish line. It's something that you should start with so that you can build out, but then you need to spend the time on really fine tuning it so that it comes out correct. Otherwise, you're just going to have a lot of misinformation and bad stuff that are out there that isn't really related towards, you know, any actual learning objectives.
Yes, it's so interesting. And now I'm thinking about if you were creating like some kind of really useful application for instructional design right now with the AI or with like some kind of technology, what would you create? What's not enough for you, for your work? Did you think about that or no?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like using like ChatGPT for scenarios. So,
Okay.
especially if we're going to be doing role play, I want multiple scenarios so that they're fresh, that they're new, and oftentimes I get in my own mindset about like scenarios themselves because I build them off my own experience. But if it can build a lot of different scenarios off of multiple people's experiences, I feel like it's going to be a little bit better. So I like it for that prompt reason, but not necessarily for doing a lot of the fundamentals that I have learned throughout my job.
Yes, great idea. It's so interesting. Yeah, because yes, you are right. Like ChatGPT can be your helper to create different kind of version of like role-playing game or like case study or something like that. Like, okay, this is for healthcare industry, or this is like for leaders from this industry, and I need 10 type of like role-playing game. Yes, it's great. And like I thought about that too, like how to create like some different kinds of trainings or something, like to create some some scenario for blended learning program. If you have like a learning objectives, you have your audience, you have like, okay, just two hours for this learning experience, and in the end we need to like develop these skills. And like the tool can help you to organize the scenario for this course, or like for this training or something like that.
I feel like most people want to have their perspective heard when you put a scenario in front of them because they can, like, everyone has an opinion and they love to be able to put their opinion and their experiences in front. For instance, if like Code Adam is a initiative for if a child is missing at a store, what should the store staff members do in that situation, right? So if you have a scenario that ChatGPT comes up with and you put that in front, people are going to want to say what they would do in that situation, and you get the conversation going, right?
Yes, right. Oh my God. This weekend, I spent time with my kiddos in a turtle space where in South Florida they collect some turtle from the ocean. They save them. Yes, it's not foundation, but like they work and they live just like for foundation. They don't have a tickets, but you can donate. And I came with my small one. Yes, I told you he is 2 years old, and my second son, he is 7 years old. And you talked about what staff need to do when like a baby go out or like lost someone. It was like just 1 second when my small one, yes, I sat like, I sat on a bench and like I saw him. Like, yes, it was in my vision, but like it's just 1 second. He's really so independent because he's a third baby and he knows everything. Like he is 2.5, but like he is like my 9 years old. Like, yes, he can. And like just I saw him just 1 second. He opened the door and go to the shop and like, yes, it's a small shop, like gift shop. And oh my God. And I came like so fast. And I saw the staff who saw him and like he is so independent and like, yes, is it your baby? Yes, I told yes, but like they work together, but like, it's really important. But what you are talking, they have to know how to do something, like how to react to the situation. And like, of course, our learning program need to support them and help them and really need to be like so useful and helpful for the work.
I'm glad it was perfectly fine for you, because like that is a nightmare. That is a complete nightmare. And so as a staff member, you need those experiences. You need to practice it. And so if you can practice with those scenarios in a safe environment, you can make mistakes and then you can correct those mistakes.
Absolutely.
So that when the real thing happens, you're well equipped to deal with it.
Yes, absolutely true. And I want to ask you about practical tips and recommendation can you offer to those looking to excel in instructional design? Like, because our listeners, maybe some of them, they want to change the career or something and they want to develop themselves. Yes.
I think a big one that I wish I had adopted early is build your network. When I was a professor, I was like a little island, I was siloed off, and my LinkedIn profile maybe had like, I don't know, 7 connections. So
now 7,000.
Yeah, now it's a little bigger. But I think that if you are ever in need, or if you are seeking help, your network is what you can turn to. And it's stronger than just you as an individual. So oftentimes, if you build more and more connections and you get to meet more and more people, you're going to have more opportunities. So, I mean, I got to meet your lovely self through a conference, and now we have a wonderful network, and now we're doing this. You never know where it's going to go, but if you invest in that, it will be something good.
Yes, it's why I love virtual communication and some kind of tools like LinkedIn, because yes, you can meet a lot of great people all over the world, and one day you can hug them in real life. And it's so like our world is so big, but we can find someone special for us. And yes, we can continue our conversation, we can collaborate and do something more for the world, and make this world the best.
You're definitely a hugger, aren't you?
Yes. It's about me. It's true, Russell. And in 3 sentences, Russell, can you summarize why this episode with you would be beneficial for our audience? We'd love to hear your reflections about that.
Well, I think that you should use your previous knowledge as a strength to bolster your new initiatives. So everyone who's listening to this, they have a wealth of knowledge to draw on, previous experiences that they can integrate into it. I was a professor before I came on to learning and development or instructional design. I know people who were translators who then transitioned into it. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Know that learning is an experience, and you can draw on your previous experiences to make it extraordinary.
Yes, great. I love it. And Russell, now it will be like, outside of technology. I want to ask you, and like outside of like learning experience, I want to talk to you about like your life and what are your like passions or hobbies? How do they influence your professional life and everything what happens like with you out of the work?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. Tell me about your like hobbies or passions which you have.
Well, I a big one is I like having game nights with friends. It's a big thing I love to do, and we also do role-playing games. So
Wow.
Dungeons and Dragons is a big one for us. And one of the things I really like about it, it's about storytelling. It's about collaborative storytelling where we're building it together. And I feel like storytelling is something that I'm very interested in because you can reach all audiences through a story. So if you can learn how to do that effectively and learn how to do that improv, you can build people up and build something better than just you can do on your own. So that's something that I draw a lot of influence from.
Wow, I love it. I love like table games with the family and with my friends. And I love the same. We are playing not just like role-playing game, but we are playing in Mafia game. Do you know Mafia?
Oh, I know Mafia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's role-playing game. Oh my God, no, it's role-playing game. Yes, and we love to play this game called Hat. Hat, it means like you need to write some words, like all the participants of the game, they have like 10 papers and they need to write some words and they need to close it and put to the hat. And after that, it's 3 rounds. Like, first of all, it's a round like you need to, like an alias, you need to say this word like without the same word. Like second round, it's like you need to show this word. And third round, it's like just you need to tell just one word and you need to understand which word was. It's the same words, but like 3 types of skill you need to use. It's really interesting. Yes, and it's so cool and so fun and so simple. You don't need so cards or something. It's just
I was
like
just about to say that. You're doing so much with so little, You just need a hat and pieces of paper to do that. That's a lot of fun.
yes, you can try.
All right, I'm gonna steal that from you. Next game
Yes,
night, we're running
yes.
hat.
Yes, and I love what you talked about, like storytelling. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe we need to create some really interesting, game for leaders or for like, for managers with the storytelling and how they can develop the skills because storytelling in the business is really important in customer service, in like when you work with employees, when you support them, when to have a deep conversation with your employees and with your partners and like everything. And our life is a story. Like, yes, it's true. Thank
Well
you
said,
for
well said.
Yes. Yeah. And like, let's delve into some of your personal favorites. Could you share with us your favorite book or film and why it stands out to you?
My personal favorite movie is a Ghibli movie called Kiki's Delivery Service. And what I really love about it, it's a children's movie, but it's about this young witch who goes into a big city and she has to discover like how to use her powers for good. And she starts a business. And a lot of it is like we were talking about with motivation, it comes down to what motivates you and how do you use what you've learned for the benefit of others. It's very heartwarming. I tear up every time I watch it.
I've never seen before, but like I add to my list and like I will share my experience with you after the podcast.
Watch that and I'll play hat.
Yes. For me is really important, like in my life is really important people and people around us. And you talked about like networking, and of course we connect with people not just like for work, but like some of them become our friends in real life. And what personal qualities do you think are essential for success in your field, in your life?
I think it has to do with commitment. Like you have to follow up and follow through with things because we can't always rely on our mood to be the thing that motivates us to do things because like I said, some days you're going to wake up and you're on top of the world, other days you wake up and you're just like, I don't want to get out of bed, you know.
Yeah.
So but if you commit to something, if you commit to meetings, like I live by my calendar, so if it's on my calendar, I'm doing it, you know. So you should put on your calendar things that are little things that you want to remember. Like, I want to check in with a friend, to make sure they're doing all right. Or I need to, send flowers to my mom for Mother's Day, which is something I need to do. So there are things that you can use your skills and your tools in order to flourish those relationships even more.
Yes, we are on the same page because I'm really a commitment person. And if you are in my calendar, I'm really disappointed if something happened and I cannot do that. But always I'm keep in touch, and I try to send a message or doing something that's, yes, if you are in my calendar, you are in my heart. And if you want to do something special in the life, you have to have some special line in your calendar, because sometimes, of course, we have a magic in our life, I believe, but not all our thing what happened with us, it's just magic. It's just something which we organize every day.
That it helps, especially when that magic just isn't there that day.
But do you have do you remember some situation which was really some magic in your life?
Oh man, I might be the wrong person to talk about this. I'm a huge skeptic when it comes towards external things. I apologize. My wife hates it because she is a very magical and
I need to
fantasy-driven
invite her.
person.
I
You
need to
do.
invite her in my podcast, and
You
we will
do.
talk about magic. Yes.
Me, I'm very logic-based. I need to set up that work beforehand and work off of that. So I mean, it's tough. I've definitely had moments and relationships that have inspired me to do things, but a lot of it comes down towards life can be hard and you need to put one foot in front of the other any way that you can in order to try and keep moving.
So interesting. You told two, oh my God, you told so 2 points, which sometimes I agree, but sometimes I disagree. I remember it was my 36 years birthday, and I'm wakeboarder. And I remember that it was the morning of my birthday, 1st of July, and I was in the river, and I sat, in a special place where you start to jump on your wakeboarding. And I thought about my life, and all my life I thought that's the life is so hard, and everywhere you need to work hard, work. And I told myself, Tamara, maybe it's not true, and sometimes life it's not so hard. What are you thinking? Because if you want to do your life so hard, it will be so hard. And last my 4 years, I understand that yes, sometimes it's so hard, but sometimes it's a place to not magic. Yes, I organize my life. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and I do my workout. I have 3 kids, I have a business, and everything what happens in my life. But in some hours per day, I know that it's not so hard, and some magic okay, I met some man or woman who shown me new way, or new customers or news, and it's so simple, just click your fingers and that's it. It's it's not magic. Of course I did a lot before, but it's so interesting, and I started to think about that, not so so to be so strong, to be so hard.
I think you're on to something. I think the magic does come from other people because they will surprise you in the best of ways. So a lot of times, if you plan for everything in your life, you're not going to leave any room for spontaneous things.
Yes.
So you need to have some space so that you can be surprised.
Yes, absolutely. And you told about your wife, who is so magical person. Tell me, please, how do you live together? She is so magical, and you're so.
We balance each other out very well.
I love it.
We were having a bonfire yesterday and just drinking outside and just enjoying the night sky. And we talked about this and the fact that she can be anxious sometimes, a lot of times actually.
Yes.
And I'm not as anxious because I feel like I'm preparing a lot. So she says that I help her not be as anxious, and she helps me not get foodborne illnesses by eating something
Yes,
that is too
absolutely.
old in the fridge. So we look after each other, you know?
I agree with you. Say hello from me.
She looks after me.
Yes, great, great. I love it. And if you were to be stranded on a deserted island, who would you choose to have with you and why? I know who.
Because she would make sure that I wouldn't die from some stupid thing that I did. I'm kind of reckless sometimes. So she'll make sure that I look before I step on the snake on accident.
Oh my God. Oh, yes, yes. We're laughing so much on this episode, and I love it. Thank you for these emotions which I have with you. And are there any memorable moments from your childhood that have shaped who you are today?
I can't think of anything right now, but I grew up with three cousins that were all boys and were all around my age. So they were like my brothers. And I just loved spending time with them and having a childhood, you know? I feel like nowadays, and you could probably speak to this, it's like being a child is completely different than when we were kids. And it's one of those things where my wife and I are thinking about having a family. We're kind of thinking, how are we going to navigate this, you know? So it's just going to be a different definition of what that childhood looks like, you know?
Like, it's so crazy for me when you spend time with your cousins and there was like they are boys, but like I have three boys and like it's so crazy. Like, I don't know, how did you live?
Well, luckily I wasn't the parent at that point. We'll see what happens if that's the case.
Yes. And in the end of my podcast, I have three questions. These questions are the same for all the guests. What was the last thing you asked ChatGPT?
I think it was scenarios for building a training. I think I wanted to learn more scenarios so that I could run people through role play.
Wow, so great. Yes. I need to ask ChatGPT too about that. Tell your favorite quatrain and explain why exactly you choose it. It could be like quatrain from like poetry, or maybe some kind of lyrics which you really love and you want to share with us.
So I got to admit, this was the first time I've run across this when like nobody's ever asked me this. And when we talk about magic, I think poetry does have a certain magic. It's like it's a different way of storytelling where people will listen and it'll get their brain going and they'll start to internalize it a little bit more. But I've never really been one for poetry. So I was challenged when you asked me this because I wanted to research something. And I came up with one, I found one from Emily Dickinson that I thought was pretty good. I liked it. Now, granted, I haven't done a lot of research, so there might be other ones that are a little bit better for me, but I found this one and I kind of liked it. So she says, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I honestly, I don't know what it means. It could relate towards the idea of taking control and letting control go. It could relate towards our mortality and be a little bit more like literal. I don't really know, but it stood out when I was looking at different examples.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing. It's so deep, And the last question, it called Ask the Next Guest. How it goes, every guest gets to throw a question at the next guest. And I believe it adds a unique touch, allowing the previous guest to pose a question to the next one. Last week, Diana Hollis was my wonderful guest, and she passed on her question to you. Are you ready to answer?
Ooh, let's do it.
Yes.
What is a trend that you see coming down the pike in the field of learning and development?
I mean, AI definitely seems to be the thing that everyone's talking about, right? But I think it's going to come down towards how can we better measure people's skills? I think that is a big one. And I think it's something I've talked about with other people from Seattle, Learnapalooza. I think Darren Nerlin's really big into this, is the idea of how can we ensure that people's skills are something that is changing a culture, and how can we measure that?
Absolutely.
It's been a challenge, but I think that we're really ready to take it head on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing it. And I love Darren, and I wanna him on my podcast. Yes, I'm waiting for the time when he will be ready. And yes, he's really brilliant expert. And I agree with you. Because it's not enough. We talk to you about learning outcomes, learning effectiveness after the training or something, but how we can measure it. Because to be honest, we don't know nothing about that. Because yes, it was last week was training for my develop my sales skills. But yesterday was my wedding, and today I'm so excited about that, and I sold a lot of product, new one. But for someone last week was a training, but yesterday grandmom died or something happened, and tomorrow I will not do nothing. And how we can measure how the training influence to our skills development, yes. Thank you for sharing. And now I suggest asking you a question for the next guest.
Okay. All right. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
Okay.
I feel like it could get very personal on that one.
Yes. Okay. I will ask my next guest, and I know her. Yes. And she will answer. I think
Perfect.
She will be yes. Okay, Russell. Do you know what? Guess what? We've done. Yes. Thank you for coming for my podcast, for my episode, and. Really, I was so excited to talk to you. It was so nice and so simple and so comfortable to talk to you. And thank you for sharing everything what you know. And yes, thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Tamara. You definitely left an impact on me when I met you in Seattle, and I was very happy to have another chance to talk with you. So I really appreciate it, and I get to have a little bit of your sunshine for today. So I appreciate that.
Russell, thank you for sharing your expertises and wisdom with us today. Thank you for all my listeners once again for being part of our podcast family. Stay tuned for more captivating episodes brimming with engaging conversations and inspiring narratives. Until next time, take care, stand curious, and keep shining brightly. Farewell for now. Bye!